Welcome to Media Empires, where we sit down with the most influential media creators right now to learn exactly how they built their empires. Our aim is to extract the secrets of top-tier podcasters, newsletter authors, and media creators who are breaking the old rules for media success. Whether you're looking to start your own empire or simply curious about the nuts and bolts behind media businesses, you'll find valuable insights and tactics in each episode. Grab your headphones, let's dive in.
This week on Media Empires, I'm joined by Boye Fajinmi, co-founder of The Future Party, a community-based media brand with a daily newsletter reaching 200,000 subscribers. In this conversation, we discuss the evolution of The Future Party, the importance of a multi-platform approach, and effective monetization strategies in today's crowded media landscape.
The Future Party. I'm excited to dive into it with you, Boy. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on Media Empires. I've been a long time fan and friend to what you're up to, so really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, man. It's a pleasure to be here. Stoked to jam and talk shop.
So let's start with the introduction for people who are unfamiliar with the Future Party. Why don't you define what it is you guys do today, but also give us a bit of the evolution of how it came to be, because it's had a few different models over the years.
Yeah, basically we are a media brand. We have 200,000 people on our newsletter, and these individuals get our content Monday through Friday every week. We have a podcast. We host events of all shapes and sizes, and we've been in the game for some time now. Really, our whole lens is we are the business of culture. So we talk about entertainment and things happening in culture, but really through the lens of business and understanding the whys and how comes and how can we empower our audience of creative professionals to essentially know what's happening so that they can be successful in their careers. And we got our start about a decade ago, really initially by building community. We were hosting parties for young coordinators, assistants in the entertainment industry. And as we grew, the brand did. So parties turned into dinners and panels and branded activations. And then we eventually kind of settled in on media.
And give us a little bit of insight into like what's really worked on the media side. Like, how have you guys, nailed in on your content? Because I'm making a different transition, right? We're starting from podcasts first, but now we're trying to get into the newsletter game and really figure that out. So I'm curious to learn from your story of how you figured out the right sort of formats and were able to make that work for you guys.
Yeah, it was really the Wild West when we got started. There weren't a lot of playbooks. There were just a couple other larger people in the ecosystem. For us, we started by writing a weekly newsletter, and it was essentially myself starting to write it, and then eventually we would ask other people in the community to guest. And then one of my other co-founders was working on a daily one, and then we just combined them. And to nail our format was really this quest for getting feedback from the audience and also a mixture of that in our gut. And we started by really distilling and curating. So we're not like original journalism, we're curators, but we have an original take to the content that we're writing. And so for us, it started with, okay, let's get the meat out of the way. Let's give them 2 to 3 big stories that they should be aware of every day. And then we'll share a bunch of links and resources and tools that are a little bit more quick hit and value based that they can also read more on their own time. But it's more so to say, hey, this is happening, you should know about it, alongside but what does it mean? It's not just you should know about it, but there's a takeaway here. And so I would argue to say we were one of the first to not just curate the news, but curate analysis.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And if you were starting today from scratch, how might you approach it differently, given it is such a more crowded environment?
Oh man, it's a great question. It's a very, very great question that a lot of people are looking at right now. To answer that, I would maybe say, let me give you my philosophy a little bit of where we're at. So I liken the newsletter economy right now to the Airbnb ecosystem. Year over year, Airbnb drives value back to its shareholders. They are crushing it. They are growing. They are dominating. It's one of the biggest success stories in Silicon Valley, right? And the newsletter ecosystem, year over year, is growing as well. In the case of Airbnb, even though the platform is crushing it, the individual hosts are not necessarily growing along with the platform. It's not a given, right? So you have hosts who maybe got in really quickly, with the hype, right? You've heard of the Airbnb bust, quote unquote, and then they leave, right? You have people who are bona fide businesses. They're making 9 figures leveraging Airbnb. They're getting stronger, right? And so you're almost seeing like a disappearance of maybe the middle guy. But at the same time, there are people who are just super content with 3 to 4 homes. It's more like mom and pop. They'll Airbnb their place out when someone leaves, and it just kind of works for them. But the high level is platform crush. Hosts, they really have to think through how to be successful on the platform if creating a sustainable business is what they want to do. And I liken that with the newsletter ecosystem. Right now, there are a handful of platforms. They're going to win. They're going to become billion-dollar businesses. The newsletter publishers, there's a whole bunch, and there is still success, but it's not the same equation that it was last time. There has to be a lot of intention. It needs to be run like a business, or you're genuinely okay with having a small amount of subscribers, not making that much money, because the newsletter is really just a part of your flywheel. If we were to do it today, I think we would think really hard about monetization right out the gate and what that means in this day and age. It used to be you could grow, by any which way you're paid, blah, 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 and expect that monetization to pay back that growth rather quickly. Advertising is not the only thing that you can hinge your success on. You have to look at other models to be successful. And so if we were to start today, I think we would move a lot faster just because of the tools that are inherent. We would think of things maybe a lot more simple. So like we had built our referral program a long time ago because there weren't built-in referral programs. So things like that are amazing that we would just do. And the things that we'd want to build in the future, we might say, hey, maybe we're not going to build these things because the newsletter ecosystem is moving so fast. Someone's going to build that very soon. And I think we would actually look to diversify our business as much as possible so that we aren't as beholden to the success of this one revenue stream or vertical. One more, I think we would probably niche down really quickly. We'd get way more niche and think of other niches that we could work alongside too. Sorry, that was a lot.
No, well said. And how would you think about niching?
It's a good question. Our whole, at least for us, our core is again the intersection of business and entertainment. So what are the different niches that are aligned with that? For a successful niche, at the end of the day, it's not just, are people paying attention to it, but is there an ecosystem of monetization around it? It's both, hey, people are paying attention, but also people will pay to get in front of the people that are paying attention. And I think we would do a little bit more analysis on that financial piece, where who's going to pay for this. That's, I think, what we would like. Yes, we're going to create great engaging content, but backing in, what are the markets that people are just spending a ton of because there isn't a product like this for that audience.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's interesting. Like the company Puck is sort of a collection of newsletters, and they've done a really good job. Like their theme around sort of We interviewed them in this podcast too. Sort of, power centers, entertainment, DC, tech, Wall Street. That's pretty good because each one is compelling in and of itself, but you also want to subscribe to the entire thing.
Yeah. Puck does a good job. I have to be biased, of course. Outside of our own, Matt Bellany's newsletter, what I'm hearing is one of the best newsletters around, hands down. They do a good job for sure.
Totally. Talk more about sort of your aspirations for the future party, if anything you can share around, like, you've already been doing it for a decade and had a bunch of success, but like when you think about where you guys are going, at scale for you guys, like what does it look like?
Yeah. I like to say, media is just telling stories on different mediums. That's really it. And so we just launched a podcast ourselves. We have the newsletter piece. We're trying to marry the goal of telling different stories on different mediums with the financial aspect of it. We're in a day and age where Wall Street is rewarding profit and margin, right? And so we are actually hyper focused on just taking it a day at a time and being rather simple. Let's just make sure the numbers, the dollars and cents add up. Yes, we want to try new things and innovate, but we want to do it in a scalable way. That's real business, which not every media company really thinks through. In fact, a lot of them don't, which is why you hear of the stories that you hear about. And so for us, the vision is let's continue to grow in a sustainable way, like I was talking about, and really build value for the end audience. Like, how can we step into their lives and be a resource that's truly valuable, that's a need. And the more we can do that and grow, the better.
One company we just had on is called Blockworks, and they are trying to cover crypto multi-platform. They started with events, then they went to podcasts, then they went to newsletters, and even deeper research. And they have sort of the signature podcast in the space, the signature conference in the space. They're one of the best sort of news sources as well. And then they launch a sort of like data product that's a bit more expensive, but they leverage their media company to get that data. And I'm curious if that's like the template that other industries should adopt. Is that sort of how you think about it, or
you're saying the data portion, or just the idea of just
overall of like a multifaceted, media, podcast, newsletters, event? And I guess I'm just curious if that is how you think about it. Like, how do you think about the different mediums relative to each other, of like what's worth prioritizing, what's going to drive a majority of the, of monetization for you guys?
Yeah, it's probably the right way to think about it. Media is a flywheel, and everything feeds in and of itself. And the best way to not be beholden to a particular type of media, right? So if COVID or inflation or interest rates or writer strikes hit you, you can diversify your revenue in different ways. But we started out but with events. And so we understand the power of events, but we also understand that not all events are monetizable, but they are one of the best things you can do for your flywheel, because it makes your brand the most palpable, right? It creates community the best. And so even if the endeavor is not massively profitable, if you can break even at least, but then you're getting tons of subscribers into your ecosystem that are now being filtered into your other products, that's gold, right? So I definitely recommend events for any media brand. Honestly, any company or marketing endeavor, events can be really powerful if you know how to retarget that end customer. Podcasts are increasingly harder. I know Turpentine, you guys are crushing it. So I think yes, at the end of the day, I could go on and on social and newsletters, but yeah, if you want like a bona fide media company, you kind of have to do it all in one form or fashion.
We'll get back to the conversation in a moment after a word from our sponsors. Hey everybody, if you don't already subscribe to the Media Empires newsletter, you should. But that's not what I'm here to tell you about. The platform we use to power this and other Turpentine newsletters is called Beehiiv, and it's excellent. First of all, it was started by the same early team who helped build Morning Brew into a $75 million newsletter business. And they built Beehiiv to offer that same powerful functionality to anyone sending emails, from essayists to business owners. The platform is beautiful, their text editor is intuitive, and they help you scale your audience with custom growth features. Beehiiv has powerful tools to help you monetize your content. You can easily launch paid subscriptions or pursue an advertising model. The Beehiiv platform will even connect you to premium brands to sponsor your newsletter. Not only do we use them, but thousands of the top newsletters in the world also use them, like Milk Road, Blockworks, Newsletter Operator, and so many more. Beehiiv's founder hooked up Media Empires listeners with a sweet deal. Get 20% off for 3 months with code EMPIRES. Visit beehiiv.com, that's BEEHIIV.com, to get started. Real talk. Most talent leaders haven't yet cracked how to leverage AI for meaningful impact on their hiring processes and business goals. But the leaders who are effectively using AI to transform their recruiting team's efficiency and quality use Metaview. Metaview is the AI assistant for the interview process. Their AI records and transcribes hiring conversations, like intakes, interviews, and debriefs, then provides perfectly summarized notes of everything that was discussed. That means your people can focus on creating a human connection with candidates during calls and save time on the busy work of cleaning up notes after every interview. But it's so much more than just a time saver, because perfect notes means perfect data. For every candidate and every pipeline, hiring teams can make confident, informed decisions, and talent leaders can finally take control of the interview process. Join forward-thinking talent leaders at high-performing organizations like Brex, HelloFresh, and Quora, and check out Metaview. Head over to metaview.ai/heretics to talk to one of Metaview's product experts or get started for free. You'll be up, running, and AI-enabled in minutes.
Blockworks does this once a year, so they do a lot of smaller events too, but they do once a year big conference that they try to sell tickets for and make a lot of money on. And I've kind of wondered if that's worth doing, if that it's a lot of work and there's no guarantee and there's upfront costs and it's a risk. And so, like, does that exist in your industry? The sort of like, conference that like 10,000 people will pay, a few $100s a ticket for, or $5,000 people or something, or like, do you guys think about trying to do very profitable or very big conferences, or is it just not worth it, or not how it works in your industry?
I think because we started with events, we took more of a micro event approach. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I would argue to say it comes down to the value proposition. For Web3 and crypto, it's just so undeniable why a huge, massive conference would work. I would say the same thing with a lot of emerging trends like AI, right? There have been people through the ages to do that successfully for their own media brands, right? Like TechCrunch Disrupt. Before The Hustle was a big media company, they were doing HustleCon. Recode has one, Bloomberg has one, The Information, you name it. It's, I would argue to say it's definitely valuable, but it is a pain to do right. And I would be careful starting with it unless you feel that your brand is undeniable, or you can have that value proposition. But done well, it can take you a long way. One case study I always talk about is Complex and ComplexCon. There are a lot of brands that started around when Complex did, and they're still around, right? And one of the reasons I feel that they are is the work that they did with ComplexCon. Their brand is so palpable with ComplexCon that if, in my opinion, ComplexCon wasn't around, they would not be around. And getting those fashion brands, those kids, those people in the same room once a year, and now they're expanding, or they just did one in Hong Kong. So I would argue to say it's not necessarily for everyone. It depends on the brand. One other model is doing small summits. You could do a small 20, 30, 40, 50 person summit still at a high ticket price and make a lot of money that way, right? And that could be a way to beta test a larger event as well. So
Yeah. And how active are you guys on events or activations at the moment? Is it more ad hoc, or is it like fully baked into your sort of, how you partner with advertisers?
yeah, I would say we are ad hoc. We just don the hat of it needs to be profitable. We're okay if like a smaller event breaks even, if it gives us a bunch of subscribers, kind of like what I mentioned. And so when we first started, I remember our brand, we would throw an event once or twice a year. But because that event was just so special and so awesome, people would be literally talking about it for months. And so you don't necessarily need to do an event all of the time to have a strong brand. You could do a couple here and there. And so for us, we kind of wait till a big brand aligns with a vision that we have and the vision that they have. And then we can do a large event that, or a small event, right? Like maybe it's a dinner. We just had a really cool activation we did at Sundance all weekend with a big brand, like stuff like that. We really like to do, and that's kind of where we're leaning into being a little bit more opportunistic.
Yeah. Have you looked into I'm not sure if it's as relevant in entertainment in this way, but like, for, let's say, Blockworks again, like they cover crypto companies, and a lot of people like to invest in a lot of firms would like special data on crypto companies. So they do both qualitative and quantitative, but they end up just basically like interviewing lots of like customers or developers, or they get some semblance of special information that would inform investment decisions, and they put some of it behind a paywall and charge a lot more for it. Is there something similar to that in entertainment in terms of like, I don't know if it's studios or who else, or is there like special, as a part of building your media company or a newsletter, like you could be getting information that you should be charging a higher, like an enterprise version of it or something? Like, have you guys thought about that, or is that less of an opportunity? Or
We're in a unique position where we are niche but not niche, right? Like I think that really works for like super hyper niche. We're kind of like film, music, fashion, marketing, right? Like so at least for us personally, it may not necessarily work, but there are tools that could naturally be a fit, right? So for example, IMDb and Variety, they have pro versions of their products where the insights that you can garner from them is, hey, who's producing films that haven't yet been released, who's attached to what's their information, and you pay a high ticket price so that you can have access to essentially everything happening in entertainment, right? And you can make better better decisions, whether that's bringing on talent or producing your film or marketing your film, blah blah blah. So it's something that's been in the back of our minds, but not necessarily in that way. So for us, we're looking at, well, what do we have to offer that is maybe not advertising based or sponsorship based that people will pay for. And honestly, we've kind of leaned into services a little bit, so we can produce events for people, and oftentimes they not only want us to produce, but they'll want our brand affiliated. But we've produced activations for Fortune 500 brands because they see our expertise for what we've done for ourselves. And so like that's an example of how we've looked at monetization.
yeah, yeah, it's interesting. For your newsletter, what growth channels have been most effective for you, or what's been, besides writing great content over a long period of time, what's been the highest lever in terms of growing that audience?
Yeah, it's interesting because the newsletter ecosystem has evolved, and the playbooks are kind of there for everyone to see. Everyone has access to them, right? You can do paid advertising, a referral program, sweepstakes, leveraging tools like boosts or upscribe / co-registration. Organic, nothing beats organic, right? If you have a good social engine, and you can get people into your ecosystem, that's absolutely the best. What we're starting to look at though is again that flywheel, right? And so I would argue to say one of our best channels is actually our events, because if we throw a really great event, people immediately get that connection with the brand. They understand it. They know the players, and then we just throw them on the newsletter, right? And they're arguably more engaged because they know there's something more special than just the news that they're getting every single day. So I love events as a growth channel, 100%. I'm actually excited about how people are looking at growth and the payback period, right? So again, we're in a very advanced newsletter ecosystem world. Several years ago, brands really just wanted exposure. They you know they and they didn't have Apple Mail Protection Program really bogging down all the metrics, and so opens was great for them. Hey, like half the list opened, great, like great impressions. Whether it's the economy or whatever you want to call it, it's now moved towards, hey, are people clicking on the ads, and are people actually converting and buying the product? And so that's something that really is important. And so you want the most engaged list you can, so that you can create a sustainable business. And one thing people talk about is the payback period. So when you grow, how quickly are you paying back that subscriber? And it traditionally, you grow, let's say we spend $2 to get someone on the list, and over several months that person will essentially have been paid for because of the advertising. Well, now there are tools where you could make half that money or all of that money back day one, because you're getting paid up front for that subscriber. And those strategies I'm really actually excited and interested, in.
That's really interesting. Gearing towards closing here, is there anything else that we haven't discussed that you think is a learning worth sharing with aspiring media entrepreneurs out there who are looking to maybe do something similar for their industry, or anything else you think worth diving to? If not, no worries. But I just thought I'd give you the chance.
Yeah, I think I'll just say a newsletter is a no. I feel a newsletter is 100% necessary for any individual, any business. I think in the future it's going to be like having an Instagram. Like everyone has one. But feel the best results you will get is if you marry that with something else and have them talk to each other. I think you have to, whether it's a podcast and a newsletter or a TikTok and a newsletter, so not just mastering, the newsletter medium, but just doing something really exceptional. And I think whether it's a podcast or a newsletter or socials or memes, it almost doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's just create value, create something that people want, that people are interested in, and the rest will come together.
No, those are good words to close on. We're definitely inspired by that. I mean, I remember going to some of the early Future Party events and being blown away at what you guys had put together. So it's pretty, and that was even before the newsletter. So it's pretty amazing to see how you've all put it together in a sort of comprehensive media company. It's one thing to be great at one medium; it's another thing to be great at multiple mediums. So I'm definitely inspired by what you guys have done. Thanks for coming on the podcast and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thanks, man. Thank you for having me. Love what you're doing too.